Hi guys, it's me, and we're going to see how well this works. Because as you will hear in the background, I got a thunderhead rolling over me right now, so it's booming and bamming. And as 2 weeks ago, I think it was, I had lightning strike 2, 3 weeks ago. Now I had lightning strike like right there, and it was so close it knocked stuff off the wall, and it took me over a day to get all my electronic gear back up and running. So I'm a little bit leery of the thunderstorm right now. So we'll see. As long as it seems to be staying off the side, okay. Hello, Wicked Viking. Good evening. If it starts getting a little too close, Hello, Diane. Hello, Chad. Hello, Kodak. How you doing? Todd Vance. Hello. Jonathan Gable. Hello. Garrett. Hello. Sampson, Alabama. Yes, sir. Joe Cool. Joe. Buckeye 80. Good evening. Yep, dove season's about to be here. Brett. Elvin. Hello. Dimmer. Hello. Justin. Good on. Good day. Ryan Holbrook. Hello. Sir Malcolm Blackie, I've managed to get home. Hope you're doing well. Thank you very much. So far, so good. Joints hurt like crazy when the hurricane passed within 160 miles of me, but I was on the good side. So all I got was a few little rain bands. Wasn't even any real storm or nothing. I have seen there's been quite a bit of damage in Florida in the Big Bend, but we didn't get any of that stuff. So now, my good friend Miss Pam and them, they got hit pretty good where when it made landfall, one of the big bands coming around the backside of it, instead of it falling all around, when it made landfall, it kind of broke the storm up and it just went sideways right into Miss Pam and them. So they got hammered pretty good. I hope they said they're okay, but I'm just, friends and family down in that area, I'm always concerned about it. Kenneth, good evening. Edgar. Oh yeah, it was last week. The internet kept going in and out, so y'all let me know if it starts doing that. On my end, everything's going good, but if it starts doing that, we'll call it quits. 2020. Good evening, Briar Smoke. I did fine. I was on the wrong side of that hurricane, so I'm good. Chuck. Good evening. Larry, awesome, taking a side by side 20. I never had a 20 in black powder. I love 20 gauge, but I had a double 10. But I grew up shooting 20 gauges, and it's one of my favorite things to do. And I learned it from my granddad. He was a quail hunter, and he preferred the 20 over the 12 because it tear up the meat so much. So I kind of got stuck on it. Brian Holbrook, cooling off your way. Yes, the last couple days have actually been a little cooler. And I'm very, very grateful for that. I mean, really, really am. It's like 10 to 15 degrees cooler. So, yeah. Russell, do Cowboy Load 44 conversions use black powder smokeless? The conversions can use smokeless. Any off-the-shelf ammo will go in it and go bang. It prefers the Cowboy Loads because it's slower velocity and less chance of leading because you're going to use lead. You do not use jacketed bullets in a cap and ball revolver. The copper jacket is a lot harder, so it spikes pressure up, it trying to force it down that barrel. Plus, you wear out your rifling real quick. So you want lead bullets. And so any off-the-shelf lead bullet will drop into the conversion and fire just fine. You'll get into hand loading real quick because that way you can tailor your ammo and get the best accuracy out of it. Hey, Lewis, good evening. Timothy, how you doing? James Singer, good. Hello to South Carolina. Did y'all get hit by Ida as she went up through there? Like it shoots some 1,400 feet per second black powder loads. I have loaded up 45 long Colt hard and broke 1,300 feet per second before in a single action army, shooting straight blacks compressed like they did back in the day, etc. Bushcraft with the Preacher, good evening. To Salinas, Kansas, hope it's going well out there. Gray Wolf, hello. Brian Holbrook, oh yeah, bow season. It's upon us, and this is a little cooler. But I can tell you, for many years of working in sporting goods at Walmart, it's hot, it's muggy, we didn't even think about it. Yeah. The week of dove season starting, the guys are going, nah, I ain't going out there. It's too damn hot. I ain't going to go. The night before, all their buddies start calling, you going tomorrow? Well, I ain't going to go. If you're going to go, I'm going to go. I'm bringing beer. I'm bringing it in. Before you know it, everybody was, nah, I ain't going to go. Here they come running into Walmart to buy a hunting license. Every year I had a line of 70, 80 people lined up. Like it. They didn't even know it was coming, And then the first cool morning, we'll have a cold snap come in late September, early October. Nah, I ain't going to do this. I ain't going to do that. And that first morning when it's 50 degrees, every redneck goes, I ain't got my deer stand up yet. I ain't got my food plot out. I ain't got my feeder out yet. And just wads come running in. I need deer cameras. I need SD cards. I need a feeder. I got any camouflage in. And it's like the magic trigger of the southern redneck that first cool morning. And suddenly, oh my God, I'm going hunting. It's kind of funny when you watch it. Herbert, hello, up to North Carolina. Eric Baker, yep, that video seems to be working real well about using the carrier. Choir boys in the house. Good evening, sir. The knife guru himself is here. James, good. Glad it didn't hurt y'all up there. Are you okay down there, choir boy? You're kind of down. I know you're closer to Tallahassee, but it give y'all any trouble when that storm come through? Brett Johnson, I have a 20 gauge flintlock, but it literally eats flints with only 1 or 2 strikes. Is it possible my frisbee is too soft? It could be, but quite often it's the wrong angle. If your flint is hitting 90 degrees like that, it's busting it. It's hitting it, and it's not letting it get out of the way. You want it at a downward angle. Try turning your flint upside down where it's angling down a little bit. So it's at this angle. So it hits and scoops the frisbee. If it's hitting 90 degrees, it busts a lot of flints. That was a real problem when they came out with the Harper's Ferry and the Harper Ferry pistol, because it was 290 degree. And you might get 2 or 3 shots, and the flint was just busted to pieces. And so it was a rock-eating fool, and we learned to angle it down a little bit. Sometimes we made a pad that went up where it grips the flint on the back of it, put a little bit of extra. So instead of it being flat, it would cock back in up, angle that down so it would shave as opposed to hit. And try that. That might save it and get good sparks. So as long as you're getting good sparks, it's not too soft. When it gets too soft, you don't get sparks. Jason, good evening. Corn pots. Blackie, what's some of the best counties in Alabama to buy land in? Looking for lots of acreage, preferably something on a lake or river. Looking South Alabama, look at Conecuh County, Covington County, toward the middle of the state, lower part of the state. Look in there. Not as developed, mostly farmland, timber company, stuff like that. Be a good place to look. Here's another thing. Go to the county assessor's office. Go to the land office. Say, who hadn't paid their taxes? A lot of times you can pick up hunks of land for paying the taxes on it. I've known several people that have come in and found out that there was 50 acres sitting here. Whoever had died years ago, and nobody has paid the taxes. And if you pay the taxes, you claim that land. So you might want to check on that. Choir board, glad you're okay, brother. Sanford, hello. Hello, Teresa in Tennessee. Hope you're doing all right. Hello, brother. Jonathan Frisbee's in the house. Yeah, corn pops. Ian was a bad one. It pushed that surge in real bad. Yeah. Part of this hurricane that just hit was it grew so fast. Yes, it was very intense, but it wasn't very big. What made Katrina so bad was, yes, she was a Cat 5, but she was 1,000 miles across. She'd stayed out there and churned and got bigger and bigger and bigger till she was 1,000 miles across. When Katrina was hitting New Orleans, we were getting Cat 3 bands hitting Alabama where I am, and I'm a 6 hour drive from New Orleans. That's how wide that storm was. When Ida, this one, not Ida, yeah, Ida, the one that just hit, it was intense, but it was relatively small. The actual eye and all of it was relatively small. She spun up quick. She was real intense, but she wasn't that big. Where Michael was probably triple that size and a Cat 5 and did a whole lot more damage. Even though it was just one scale higher, it was because it was bigger, and therefore it's got more mass, so to speak, moving. Brian Holbrook, Northwest Montana. You get up in the cool country now. Hopefully it's cooling off for y'all. Sir Malcolm, Blackie, have you ever done any historic camping? I got a bug late for some frontiers and stuff. 25 years I did live in history where I started out in Mountain Men, and I backed up and started doing War of 1812. Then I rolled into just after Revolution. Then I rolled back to Rev, and I ended up in about 1750. And I did all of that. I did Courrier de Bois. I did Long Hunter. I did Soldier, Minuteman. I did Mountain Man. I did Native American interpretation. I did a lot of it. I have laid on the ground with a blanket over me. I laid on the ground with a buffalo robe, you know. So I did 25 years. I played with that a lot. Had a lot of fun with it. And it helped me a lot for doing what I'm doing now in my bushcraft, because my buckskin experience applied very readily over to bushcraft. Wolf, 61 Navy is a lot of fun. Michigan Silverback, glad to help. Thanks for all the support. Edgar, what about buying a half an acre of land right next to 10,000 acres of unused land and grazing your sheep and goats on it? You would have to pay somebody because that unused land belongs to somebody. There is no land east of the Mississippi that is not owned somebody. You know, maybe they don't use it, and in which case they can graze. A lot of neighbors work with, hey, yeah, when I butcher a cow, I'll give you one, or I'll butcher goats, I'll give you one or two. It's payment for letting me graze. They'll probably work with you on that. Another thing that a lot of places down here that are raising sheep and goats do is they go around to municipalities and they'll bring a trailer with them, and they turn the herd loose to eat kudzu in the ditches and stuff, and the city will pay them. We've also started down here in the south, they're putting up solar farms, which are the big solar collectors that tilt and track the sun. Bama's got plenty of sunlight. Well, how do you keep the grass and the weeds out under it? They run goats in there. There's just a pipe coming out of the ground going to the array that tips, see, and so there's no wires for them all. And they use goats and sheep and put them under there. And there's a news article here recently by a guy about 100 miles north of me that he was making a pretty good living taking his goats to the farm, and the farm company, the power company, was paying him to kind of keep the grass cut, and turning loose his goats in this big enclosed area with a fence, letting them eat. He goes there, lets them eat all day, loads them back up, brings them back. Next day, brings another thing. And he was making a good living cutting grass for goats, because they'll just walk around the whole array and not damage anything. But you can't run a lawnmower under it because it's only 36 inches off the ground. See, a goat will walk around over there and gnaw everything. Garen, hello. Okay, I moved. Just a second. Let me catch back up here, guys. Y'all doing good comments. Like you don't read that fast. Brian, I don't know of any serious problem there, but I'm on the outside. I'm not part of that. That's, I'm really good at keeping to my business, but I don't know of anything bad there. I think just kind of part ways and be yourself. I think is what I see it at, but that's it. Jeff, over to St. Louis. Johnny, 3806. Yeah, that was a big part of it. And the fact that how slowly the response came. New Orleans went from a modern city to a third world country in 18 hours. Yeah. JB, hello. Tony Powers in the house. Hello, sir. Thank you for dropping in. Bears in the house. Wow, everybody's here tonight. What a good one. Teresa, hello. Yeah, corn pops. It tore up a lot of boats. It destroyed just about everything down there. And I knew it would. I've been in that country down there, and when I saw that thing aiming for it, I had a friend that lived down there not far out of New Orleans, and I called him and said, get the hell out now. Just get the hell out. All of that part of Louisiana, nothing just but a big sandbar is all it is. Nothing there. And so you get enough water on the ground, it just becomes quicksand. It's slop, even in the cities. So get out. And he didn't heed me, and he had a real tough time getting out. He had to walk out of New Orleans. Day 3, he walked out. Swam out, and got out because it was getting so bad quick. Okay, let me catch back up. Russell, ever try 17 grain smokeless powder and a 58 Remington? No, they say don't do it, but it's just so clean. It's also such a clean trip to the ER with a grenade in your face. It will hold, and then it don't. If you look at the web between the chambers, look how thin it is. Every time you fire it, you're doing this. And that thin piece of metal fatigues, and you can't tell any difference. And then you pull the trigger. And whenever you do, it's a grenade in your face. There was in the late 1860s, Austria invented gun cotton. And they started experimenting with it, and they were loading rounds for their muskets. It had a stick. There's a paper cartridge site that shows these things. He makes modern productions of it, and they tried it and everything. They found out that the difference between good and not good in compression was a tenth of an ounce. A tenth of an ounce. Too much compression, and the gun would literally explode into 1,000 pieces in the hand. I have had friends over the years that experimented with that, and they thought they had found the magic secret. They didn't want to clean the gun. And all but one had a scar today to prove it. The one that didn't, he had a 58 Remington Buffalo Hunter, the long barrel, and he had worked up a voodoo load of smokeless that was just so weak, it was just fine. I worked it out. He was a very accomplished hand loader in modern guns. And so he had probably shot it 50 times. He's absolutely convinced pressures and everything was perfectly safe. It was great. And he took his grandson out to show him. And when he pulled the trigger, the frame ripped forward, the cylinder busted. We picked up almost 20 pieces. And how it didn't shred his hand is just a miracle. And how his grandson didn't get eat up. At that moment, he went to shoot. The grandson ducked behind him because he was afraid of the flash, and that's what saved his grandson. It's just too big a risk. Hiram, good evening. No, I have not. I'm kind of half-hearted looking, to be truthful. We want one. My beloved Nugget the Wonder Dog passed away a few months ago of old age. There's this dog-sized hole in me and my wife's life. I mean, we got a couple of cats, but there's this dog-sized hole. and we don't want anything high spirited or whatever. And many years ago, we had a rescue of a basset that worked really, really well. And so we're hoping that we will stumble upon somebody that's got a young basset in a male or female that we can adopt and take care of. So we have not got to the point of, okay, we'll go spend $700 at a breeder, because we have no intention of breeding. We just want a companion, and we want something with a nice long lifespan, because it breaks our heart so much when we lose one anymore. And it's going to be here a while. She was looking at a French bulldog, and we found out the average lifespan 6 years, and she said, that ain't no. We're not doing it. We're not getting attached to it and lose it that quick. Nugget 17 and a half. So we thought we lost him early. Steve McLean, hello to Western Massachusetts. True. Subscriber, yeah. They can make things go. You'd be amazed how you can make things go bang. Thank you. Okay. Preacher man, I have not, but I tell you, if you'll go look at my good friend WC Knives, William Collins, he has a video where he takes a king size bed sheet and uses a combination of stuff you get at the hardware store and makes a waterproof bed sheet. Turns into like sil nylon. He said you can't, when you feel it, it feels just like sil nylon. And he made it in an afternoon, hung it up, and said it dried in about 4 days. And so the weight of a top bed sheet off a king size bed, you can have a sil nylon tarp. That, high count, you want high thread count. Tiny time. The wife kind of is leaning toward a pug. She had a friend that raises pugs, and that and a French bulldog. But we'll see. We'll look at it. I want something to lifespan about that long, and something a little smaller. Bassett's low heel base. And our cats get along with dog. Just Nugget would go lay down on his bed, and all the cats would pile around him at night. He had his furry blanket of cats. So they're kind of missing their doggy. ADKMS, hello there. Michelangelo, have you ever been influenced by ultralight backpackers? Yes, I did ultralight backpacking early on in the 80s and stuff. Not to the extent they have today. We didn't have those materials yet. But my average backpack was around 13, 14 pounds. After I got out of the days when I was toting 80-pound backpacks, I kind of woke up one morning and said, why am I hauling all this junk? I don't need much. And so I scaled down to very, very lean. And once I transitioned to doing my living history stuff, where I was living out of a haversack and a little piece of tarp or a blanket, and improvising shelters and stuff like that as part of the historic thing, the two kind of meshed together, because I was in what we today would call survivalism or whatever. Back in the 80s, we were convinced we were going to be at war with the Soviet Union, and so we were preparing and training and stuff. And I learned I had come up using ponchos and all the military gear. So the ultralight backpackers were very interesting to me, especially they had such very, very fine light gear. And I got into that for a while. I bought ultralight stuff. I carried ultralight stuff. My problem was I found that most of it didn't have longevity. Yeah, super light, but all the packs and everything, no matter what they call that fiber, was some variation of plastic, really. A spun plastic fiber or whatever. Even though it looked like Cadura, but it was actually had something else. and they always were cutting the threads where they burn the holes for the threads and sew through it, so to speak, a hot needle sewing machine. And yet that left a sharp edge, and that thread in there, eventually they'd always lose seams. And you wouldn't get more like a year or two out of it, and then it would fall apart. Whereas I got canvas backs over here that are from World War II and are still functional, completely functional, and used heavily. So yeah, I kind of got back out of the ultralight because I got tired of paying big money for something that didn't last. Right, Edgar. Yeah, there's no marketplace, right? Yeah, corn pop. I had half wolf, half Newfoundland. It was where Alaskan timber wolf, back when you could have such thing to make temper shepherds, had got loose and bred with a neighbor's dog that was a pedigree Newfoundland, and that it made a big shaggy Rottweiler. It's basically, imagine that, named Bear, and he was about 135, 140 pounds, and but he was still wolf, you know. Loved him. That dog got me through so many things. That was my buddy. He passed away in 1993, in September of 93. So this coming month will be what, 30 years ago? I still mourn that dog. Out in my side yard, I put him a grave, put him a headstone, and there's still some cool winter nights I'll go out there with a chair, and I'll bring my pipe, and I'll bring my 18-year-old scotch. I'll sit out there with a chair, and I'll visit my old friend. Hope to see him on the other side. Ms. Lee, hello from Buckley, Washington. Awesome. Edgar, yeah, going with a basically just a haversack, doing kind of like you drop the weight way down. Johnny, yeah, that's the thing. They come up with these bags and they're great, but they how you getting it there? And I don't. I fully believe in being prepared and etc. But I've had individuals that have sat there and detailed 5 years worth of food, this, that, and they got all this stuff. And I say, okay, how much gasoline have you got stockpiled? Because you ain't toting this nowhere. And you sure ain't gonna leave it. So if you got to get out of here for whatever reason, how you moving it? And that a lot of them don't think about that. How am I gonna move it? You need a rider truck to move all this stuff. Plus, people going to kind of notice, when there ain't no food and everybody's getting kind of lean and you're still kind of chubby, they're going to kind of notice. So, Scott Carlson, okay, good. You'll do nice and barbecue. Good stuff. Gray Wolf, I hear you. Jane, good evening. Andy, good evening to South Georgia. Did y'all get any of the hurricane in South Georgia? I saw where it went through there. I know it was heavy, heavy storms. Did y'all get any damage? Sir Malcolm, you're right. Like I said, there's a dog-sized hole in me and my wife's life right now. Buckeye 80, if you have gear, you must use it to hone your skills. Correct. I've had people want me to teach them. Great. But when they walk up, every bit of their gear is brand spanking new. Ain't even dirty. And that tells me right they don't have any experience. So I kind of tailor my teaching to kindergarten level and then to bring them up. If they walk up and they got well worn and well patched together gear, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm gonna start it a little bit more up here. I learned from my grandfather the way my teaching style is: show me what you know, and I'll show you what you don't know. instead of wasting your time, starting with the chopsticks when you already know how to play a piano. So let's just jump up here then. But at the same time, if they don't know how to play the piano, let's start with chopsticks. You know. Hunt, fish, rock and roll. You've probably answered this question numerous times, but what's your opinion if you can only have one knife and it needs the ability to baton and retain an edge? Kukri. A kukri from Gurkha House. If you'll look on Amazon, and it's called the Afghan Issue, is one very similar to mine, around $100. The back is a 25 hardness, and it's about that thick. The edge is an 80. Hold an edge really well, and you can use it as a fro. You can use it as a draw knife. You can dig with it, baton with it. If you stuck me to only have one period, it's going to be an argument between my WC knife that I've got, my Blackbird, my original one, or a kukri. And depending on how I feel this is going to go, if it's going to be a lot of shelter building, it'll be the kukri. Because that weight and chopping and splitting and digging ability. And I've used that thing 25 years now, and I have used the snot at it. We were at a gather over in Mississippi, and there was a stump like this. It was a cutoff piece that big, and we didn't have a heavy axe, and that was the only really significant hunk of firewood that we could find, a chopping block like. And so I got out there with my kukri and went to working on it, and everybody's kind of sitting there watching me, kind of shaking their heads like, It took me 20 minutes of working the line and everything, but then I strung that thing down, whack, and you hear crack, and the crack around it. It's mine now. And once I got the split, I busted that thing up into usable hunks. And 5 minutes after that, it just took 30 minutes of work to get it there. But that kukri could do it. Given enough time, that kukri will do it. Andy, good. Glad y'all didn't get any trouble out of it. Terry, yeah. Labs are always, I had labs for years, and labs are affection hounds. They got to be where you are in your lap. They're not boring. Forget it. They're just never. We had one named King that he was the best radar in the world, because the minute he heard just a slight bit of thunder, he'd go over to the water bucket. He'd get him we had him on an outside run, and we'd bring him in, but his exercise program, and he'd go over and give him a drink of water, and he'd go bark, 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 and he would bark till he passed out. And then he would go get him a drink of water, and he'd bark till he passed out, let you know thunder's coming, Mom, and you had to bring him in the house, because he is radar. Love that dog to death, but it was never boring with that dog. Edgar, I'd fight it with a kukri. The cat's got 4 attacks: claw, 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 bite, lightning speed, but he's got a lunge at you. Kukri, cock. There is no minor wound from a kukri. It's like a chainsaw hit them. If you're going to have to get me in such a situation where I'm going to give you an edge weapon and you got to face something like that, give me a kukri. By far, give me a kukri. I'd rather have a shotgun, but if it's got to be an edge weapon, give me a kukri. Yeah, 2020. It's amazing how well they can deliver that stuff. Okay, Edgar. Swords are cool. Cool. Yeah, there used to be a guy that had I don't know if it's still there or not, but there was a guy that had a channel on YouTube called Test to Destruction. And this guy wore a hockey mask because he got death threats where he would take knives, buy them himself, and then he would take them, use them, abuse them until they failed. And yes, this was abuse, but he would start out with it and would it slice paper. Then it would it slice, like heavier paper? Would it slice cardboard? Would it chop a soft 2x4? Would it chop through a 4x4? Now would it, baton it into a big gnarly piece of wood? Okay, it did that. Now do this. Then it went up to a thin, like 2-inch thick slab of concrete, but bust up concrete. And then he went to cutting mild steel, and then he cut and he cut. And the last thing he was doing was trying to cut an anvil. He'd put it on an anvil and hit it with a sledgehammer. At what point does it break? Yes, it's abuse, but at what point? And it was a real eye opener because I remember had this one knife that was he had gotten. It was one of the darlings that time of the survival circuit. And special forces are using this. Ooh, it was a $700-something knife. And he sliced paper, he sliced cardboard, and when he went to chop a 2x4, the blade sheared in half on a sugar soft 2x4. I mean, you see that thing like, you're kidding me. On the other hand, abusive battle mistress went all the way to where he was beaten on an anvil with it. And he couldn't break it. Sweat is pouring off this man. And when he gets done, he's looking at it. And yeah, the edge has been banged up like crazy. But you hell, I could resharpen that. And so he gave it his highest rating. There were only 2 knives at the time I was watching that he could not break. One was abusive battle mistress, which is probably a $1,000 knife. The other was a Gurkha house cookery like mine. Those are the 2 knives. All others broke. Those 2 didn't. That's one of the reasons I like my cookie. I'm not saying it can't break tomorrow, but it gives you a confidence to see something abused that way and it not fall apart. Yeah, Mark, when you get a cookie properly sharpened, it's scary how well those things will go through wood. It really is scary. When I was at Georgia Bushcraft this last time, Jax Ganga, the lady that the survival instructor, she had been a Pathfinder instructor. She's now doing independent. And she had a bucket of blocks about like this, a fat lighter that she needed busted up. I just bring them over the tent. We'll do it. So I was having to pull my turn, sitting up there by the pavilion with our group, kind of keeping an eye on things. She brought the bucket over, and I took my kukri and I was just going whop, 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 and it was busting off and hand-sized slab, just like, how fast it can be. But it just cleaved it like it was nothing, like your paperback book falling off every time I hit it. And I busted up that whole bucket in like 3 minutes. Nothing good. She was rather shocked. And that turned into a kukri class because people walking by, like, show me how you do that. And we had a green stump that was sopping wet. It had just been cut probably a couple days ago. So no way you can bust it. But you could see how well, and I let people take a swing at it and how deep that thing would sink in was relatively minor effort. And these people didn't have a lot of experience. I showed them how to get braced so they wouldn't going to hurt themselves and said, just hit it. It would sink that deep into that block. And then we just torque it right back out. And it was a real eye-opener to them how well that thing cut. And that's the reason these things were used as weapons as well. Steve Kingsbury, good evening, sir. Remember, Steve, first weekend of October 6th, 7th, 8th, down at the lake. Rob, okay, I haven't heard of Joe X, but okay. Eric, yeah. It leaves a hole. Michelangelo, it is for me as well. Okay, Cover Daily. Blackie, what's the best way to wash clean the 49 mountain bag? What I do is I use in a bathtub. I go get some woolite. You know, like you buy at the store in the detergent stuff. It's called woolite, white bottle. And a couple of capfuls of that to about a that deep or so in a standard size bathtub. You want warm water, not hot water, but warm water. Okay. Put it in and gently, don't make knots, because the feathers, once they get wet, they're going to clump. You don't want to break them up. So if you start wringing it out, you're going to bust up your feathers. That's not what you want to do. But you want to saturate that all the way through the material. Okay. Let it soak for like 15, 20 minutes. Turn it every so often. Then you want to pop the drain, just put some running water, rinse it really good, turn the shower head on, rinse the whole thing, lay it down and let water flow through it whenever possible. It might be a good idea now, once you've got it saturated like this, be once it's drained, you open up your drain in your tub and let the water run out. Give it a half hour, 45 minutes for all the excess water to go, you know, shake it out or whatever. Let the water get out of it. And then put it in a garbage bag, take it outside, lay it out on the carport, take the water hose and just wet it down and soak it and let the water run through it and get the wool out of it, clean it out. Let it drain thoroughly. And then once it drains thoroughly, hang it up and let it air dry. Now, if you go someplace that's got one of them big industrial dryers and you set it on cool, not on hot, but on cool, so it will tumble it. And after it's dry to the touch on the outside, you've let it air dry for a day. Go put it in them dryers, throw a pair of sneakers in there tie, that you don't care about, tie the legs together and throw it, so it gives it a little bit of agitation. And tumble dry it for about a half hour on cold air. So it's just air being fluffed through it. And that's how I clean mine. I clean mine probably every couple of years, depending on how much I've used it. Usually that 49 mountain bag doesn't come out till it's dead of winter, and it's only going to get 1 or 2 camp outs, and it's too warm for it. Andy, Bear and Sons are very nice knives. I've got a friend of mine that collects them, and they're very nice, well-made knives. Mitch, good evening, by the way. Blackie, in your on your butt 110 video, you said that you put the edge on the back edge. What do you use to sharpen it? I used a fine tooth file just to make sure I got a bevel on it. First, it had a little bit, but I went ahead and just did a few strokes, and I shifted over to a diamond hone. It is not a true edge. It's not going to slice paper. But instead of it being like that kind of blunt, I thinned it out. So you saw on that thing, I bared it, it actually cut me, you know. But makes it slice better, and you can shave bark with it real easy. That'll save my cutting edge. And one of those common things you're doing when you're having to make a fire and everything's wet is get rid of the bark. And so rather than, you know, I'm picking up, snapping off limbs and stuff off trees, and even though it's up in the air or whatever, it's still going to have a little bit of a grit to it, because dusty, sandy down here in my part of the country, there's a lot of dust in the air, especially during, if it's near any kind of farm agriculture, or etc. And so that'll be in the bark, and that dull a knife. It's also a thing that you see a lot with people that go to clean hog down here, and they talk about how it just dulls their knife in an instant. Well, if you'll take a piece of that hide and really, really look at it, you'll often find sand embedded in their skin where they lay in the dirt all the time. And you lay there all night, and that grain of sand gets embedded into that meat, and it kind of grows over it. And so they got 1 inch thick hide, which is kind of an armor, and it's just like trying to cut heavy carpet or something, and it'll dull a knife. And so you want something that can, you know, when I'm shaving bark, instead of using my cutting edge, I want to use that back edge to go ahead and get it off there. That's one of the reasons I sharpened it that way. Jeff Hansen, the haversacks, there were just the haversacks in this run shipped. The rucksacks are en route to me right now. I got word from Joe. He had a machine go down that put him behind a little bit. But he said they have both already been shipped. I expected either tomorrow or Monday to show up. I've already got the bags labeled, the shipping bags. So as soon as the rucksacks show up, the Nighthawks, I just had to fold them up, stick them in the bag where I already got the haversack in it for the guys that are getting the combos, and it'll be on the way. So hang with me. It's not much longer, and they'll be on the way. Ford tractor fanatic. Is anyone familiar with the fro made by Buck that can be used as a chopper? I think I have that bar with that edge. Yeah, I think I do. Leach, good evening. Yeah, gray wolf, same as using a chainsaw on cottonwoods. A lot of times they got sand embedded in them. The worst tree we got down here is black gum. The grain just grows in this gnarly pattern. You can't split it, you can't bust it, and you'll dull a chainsaw usually trying to cut it. We would have to cut. We would mark the those and avoid them until the last to keep the chainsaw sharp. So we'd come and we'd cut all the soft stuff, then we'd cut all the oaks, and then go back and get all those black gums because you knew it was just going to dull it down, and you're just kind of like sanding through it. So better to do that than do it early, and then you got to resharpen that blade for you and cut the rest of them. Eric Vader, what are your thoughts on WC knife? Love them. Absolutely love them. William is a good friend of mine, and beyond that, it's a fantastic knife. It's the best knife I've ever owned. And I've got several WC knives. I helped him develop the WCSK, the Master Woodsman series, and Master Woodsman #1 and #2, and the Blackbird, and then several others that he's come up with that I've got. The Nessie, that's my wife's knife. That's her favorite. So yeah, and the Trinity, the Sainer Scout, and a bunch of them love his knives. The Mad Knife Wizard is great. He makes a fantastic knife. Jeff, I hope you have many years of adventures with a haversack. Michigan Silverback, can you clear up the haversack controversy? Okay, what's the controversy? Yeah, Donnie Pavolini is in the house, guys. We have another internet star in here tonight. He's got a great channel. Check him out. Donnie. It'll kill. Sorry you had to go to a funeral. Sorry for the loss. Speaking on haversacks, uh, when when I do a run, here's the way it works. I announce I'm doing a run of haversacks or a rucksack together, and there is people have asked me in between this run and the last run. They'll say, "Can you put me on a list?" I say, "Yes," and I make up a list of them emails, and then whenever I get the okay from the manufacturer, we're clear to do another one, because I got to work with his workload too. He's not just making for me; he's making for a lot of things. And so I go to them. I say, "Okay, here it is," etc. I give them a head start, and I say that I'll tell you on Monday, and next Monday is whenever I'll announce it to everybody. They get their head start. I do it. I'm collecting the money. When I get the money that's needed to pay for the run, I then transfer the money straight to the manufacturer, and he's already cutting them and he starts making them. He gives me a delivery date of like this. So the ones that we bought in May delivered in August. The ones that we're doing now are going to deliver in November because he's got to make them. You know, it isn't something where I go and have them made and then I get them in the house and I sell them. I collect up everybody's money and pay for the run, you know, because I ain't got that kind of money where I can just buy the thing. It'd be ideal if I had, rolling in dough where I could just go and say, run me 500 or whatever. But I don't have that kind of money. And today, most people don't. So that's the way that we run it. It's prepaid to pay for them to be made. And then you got the manufacturing time. This is the way I've always done it. For these several years we've been doing it. It's the way we did it with Jason, when we were doing with Campcraft, and what we're doing now with Possum. And it works out pretty good. And most people are pretty okay with it. You know, they understand I'm straight up with them. I tell them when it is, and I tell them roughly when the delivery date. And it's always a rough guesstimation because life gets in the way. But thus far, we haven't had a major problem. Major problem. So that's where we're at. Oh, Tennessee Smoky. Blackie, did you paint your Pathfinder cook set? If so, what paint do you use? Standard barbecue paint. It's rated to 1500 degrees, which is more than hot of anything I'm going to encounter in that stove. What I do is I take sandpaper and I rough it up. And then I'll take a Scotch-Brite and go back over it. Then I'll usually wash it and let it dry to get any of that grit off there. Then I will take the pot and set the pot upside down on a piece of cardboard and just fog it real light, about this far away. Just don't even try to do any coverage. Just kind of like a woman putting on hairspray. Just fog it. Give that 10 minutes. Those little droplets will stick and kind of grip, and it keeps the paint from wanting to peel later on. Then I come back with my second coat and I cover it completely. I give it a half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it takes that paint to dry. And then I put a second coat. Usually that's going to take care of it. And usually I don't have to recoat a pot maybe once every 4 or 5 years from use. But I found that the aluminum and titanium and stainless, the soot that comes off of certain woods you just can't seem to get it off of there. You know, it just for some reason wants to bond to the metal, but not stay there. It's always smearing. But when I paint one, it's dark and it seems to absorb heat a little bit better. It seems to cook a little evener, just from my point of view, non-scientific here. But it definitely cleans up better because you can wipe that soot off that black paint a whole lot easier. And so when I got done cooking and I'm about to put the pot back up, that's when I can take that paper towel or water and just wipe the outside of the pot and get the bulk of the soot off of it and then put it back in its bag, go in the pack or whatever, and not soot up all of my gear. But for years I did it where I just cooked and I'd have soot everywhere. It's just like you couldn't walk by this thing and not get soot on you. But I learned from somebody else they painted theirs black. They were doing it for military application because they didn't want it to shine and reflect, and so it actually worked pretty good. And so I started doing it with mine, and I'm still doing it. Sir Malcolm, yes, it is. And I thank everybody for your talks and your comments over here. Appreciate it. Garen, have I had a chance to compare the WCSK and Nitro V with the ABL ones? I'm going to tell you, guy, ABL is the way to go. AEBL is it's a razor blade. It takes an edge better than any other steel I've ever seen. And yet, is a contradiction of terms. It sharpens so easily. It's like it's dead soft, and yet it's got a Rockwell in the mid-60s, and it holds an edge just fantastic. But when you do dull it, you can just seem like you just 2 or 3 strokes, and it's right back. Where other steels is harder to get that edge back, but not with ABL. When we went to Blade Show and AAA Forge, that is, I understand it is considered some major authority in the blade community. He made the statement that there were 3 people in the United States that had figured out ABL, and William Collins was one of them. And when he made that statement, because we're over there as vendors selling, he made that statement, and within 30 minutes, we had sold almost 50 knives. Of people going, they didn't care. These were all knife makers. They didn't care what the design was as long as ABL give it to me. I don't need a sheath, because they're going to try to retro figure out what he did, and none of them could, because that heat treat, the mystery of it, came from me, Dan Lutz, and William Collins. I'll never tell. Dan's dead, and William will tell you. But AEBL, get it. You'll really like it. It'll kill. Blackie, have you used eggs to tan a snake hide? No, I've used antifreeze before, but I have never tanned with eggs. I've heard of it done. I've heard of it being tanned with eggs, alum, glycerin, which glycerin is basically what antifreeze is. Not sure. I've heard of a couple other things, but that's about it. Carlos, good evening. Tennessee Smoky, good. Good evening, Dakota. Nope, never late. Just come on in, brother. Buckeye 80. Any wool blankets you recommend? Creek Camper, hello, sir. Here's what I'd recommend you do. You're going to have to dig a little. One of my first successful videos way back like 2009, and it's on my channel. It's buried so deep, and it's called Blanket Wisdom. And I talk about blankets, and I show you Army blankets, blankets, and Whitney's, and things like that. And I go in depth describing it, because I'm coming right out of the living history, and we use Whitney blankets because the blankets are thick. They've got a good weave to them. Not quite waterproof, but at the same time, they can take a little bit. But even wet, they're warm. And I can see that from firsthand experience of sitting in a driving rain where there was no other shelter, guys. We were on a trekking event, and all you could do is just wrap the blanket around you and just sit at the base of the tree, and it would pour and rain. And it was probably in the 40s. And yeah, I was wet, but I was warm inside that blanket. And so if you're going to try to do something, just a wool blanket, Whitney's are the way to go. Sir Malcolm, AEBL is razor blade material. Literally, it's what they make razor blades out of. And it does have a grain to it. But the heat treat that is discussed in the book that tells you what to do does not apply. You'll make something so brittle you can snap it like it's made out of peanut brittle. And we tried playing with all that. It's something about the grain structure. And AEBL is a form of stainless. It's a high carbon stainless, though. And one of the reasons people said that stainless and carbon, the carbon cut better, was when you look at the very edge under a microscope of a carbon blade, you see this. It looks like teeth on a saw as the actual carbon fibers bow out as they're exposed. Okay. When you look at stainless, like 440 stainless, it's a sharp edge like that. There's no grain to it, which meant that once something was wet, that blade just wanted to slide on it rather than cut on it. And so that's reading stainless steels with poor heat treat in the early days when those things were really becoming popular in the 1960s, sucked, especially in kitchen knives. We didn't have diamond hones. Diamond hones will put teeth on a stainless steel. AEBL does have a grain. It's not as pronounced as a high carbon steel. It is a high carbon stainless, and so it does have a grain. That's the reason they want it for a razor blade. So such a thin blade would grip think of it like a sausage. They actually grip the hair on your face and kind of pull it a second and then pop through it so it would cut, and then the hair would track back into the skin. It's kind of pull the hair out, cut it off so it retracts below flush so you have that baby smooth cut. So that's the reason they developed AEBL. But we're using it 1,000 times thicker to make a WCSK. And those fibers really, really work. It's very tough, very durable, very rugged. Holes in the edge. It's one of my favorites. My Blackbird is AEBL, and my original prototype is 012 steel. And I'll tell you for a fact, the Blackbird will get a whole lot sharper. I don't normally run my knives that sharp, but it can easily be that sharp. Where you could make literally so sharp if you touch it, you're cut. You wouldn't even feel it slicing. Dakota's doing some videos on blankets, bedrolls, and stuff. Y'all might want to check out. Dakota's got a good channel. He's coming up. He's working with me. He's going to be an instructor with me at the Silver Wolf gathering in Ohio. And so y'all might want to check out Dakota in the Woods. Hudson Bay is a very good blanket. Hudson Bay or Whitney's. Hudson Bay is the importer that brought them in the U.S. For a while there, because Whitney is out of England, and they've been making those blankets since the 1600s. And so you could buy the blanket without the Whitney tag on it at like wholesale, but you could not say it was Whitney. You had to be a licensed dealer to use the name Whitney, and then they would throw the Whitney label into the blanket, but you had to be a licensed dealer. And at rendezvous and living history events, there was Northwest Trade Company, I think it was, or a blanket company. They were the only authorized dealer in the U.S. at that time to have Whitneys back in the 80s. And so they had the label sewed in, and I've got like 4 Whitneys with those labels on there. It was a market quality, and those were not cheap blankets, but they'll last a lifetime as long as you use them and take care of them. Garen, that's because the supply of AEBL is kind of hard to come by right now. So that's probably the way he's doing it. Believe me, if he can get it, he wants to make it out of them. Buckeye, good. Glad you found it. Steve Johnson, they are not cheap, but they are lifetime investments. Can you do an updated video on your older wool blanket video? I need to. I need to revisit that subject. And this fall, once it cools off a little bit and I dig out wools and stuff, I'll do that. Bushcraft Basics, thank you very much. Sir Malcolm, that's cool. Carlos, Blackie, which mag light do you recommend? Ooh, that's a good one. To be honest, I've been out of the mag lights for quite a while as far as that. Now, the old 2-cell mag light is a guarantee that rides in the vehicles. Every vehicle I got's got a 2-cell mag light with LED bulb. Now, I know today they all come with LED bulb, but back in my day, the flashlights came with 2 bulbs because that was the weakness of it. If you dropped it, the bulb went poof. Today, you got that LED bulb, which you can hammer nails with them things. So I've got 2 D-cell in both vehicles. The smaller mag light are great for carrying and etc. I'm not as versed today on the various models. I just remember the small ones. Pin size ones were great for sliding in kits or pockets out of the way. Great for hanging on a ridge line, illuminate right here inside of a hammock or something like that. Flipping it up here on a hat to shine down and what I'm doing, things like that. Another trick I recommend to people that's got them clips is keep you a necklace of some kind. And if you're going to be around people in camp, instead of putting your headlamp up here on your forehead, so every time you look at everybody, you blind everybody, hang it around your neck, shining straight down. You can see your feet and you see everything you're doing right here. But that way, if I turn and look at Bob, I don't blind Bob. You know what I mean? It's easy to pick it up and aim it. But just hanging around your neck when you're in social setting around camp people, when you're by yourself, you just look at your forehead. But that's one of my things is you just got your night vision. You're getting out of your tent to take care of nature's call. Everybody's sitting by the fire and they hear Blackie move, and suddenly, you know, Blackie's in the spotlight. You know. Garen, pendulum blankets were good blankets as well. They're a little thinner, but they're good blankets. Alpaca wool blankets are not scratchy. They are warm. They're not as warm as the others, but they're good blankets. They're definitely not as scratchy. And so if you're one of them that doesn't like to feel wool on you, you're probably going to like alpaca or that merino wool and stuff like that. Edgar, yeah, but the problem is Blackie's at camp. Everybody's wondering what Blackie's doing. So when I get up to use nature, everybody, Blackie, where are you going? Taking a 10-100. I'll be back. And everybody needs to learn how to make some sort of bread in camp. When you do, like I've done 10, 14-day living history events and stuff like that, trust me, you know, you have had all the boiled jerky and all the roasted meat you can stand. You've ate it every meal now for 4 or 5 days. And having a hunk of fresh bread and a piece of cheese makes it a whole lot more enjoyable. And so everybody needs to learn how to bake a simple loaf of bread. Beer bread. Look up beer bread. Ain't it simpler? Dump the flour, dump a thing of beer, ta-da, beer bread. You know, works really good as well. Yeah, Dakota's right. He uses a can of lantern or one of them small little inserts, just enough light to see, but not glaring. And that's one of the things I carry in my pocket a Olight, the small one that I think it's called a baton. I believe, I'm not sure. It's my daily carry. Had it about 3-4 years now, and it has like a 300, 700, and 1,000 looms, and it's rechargeable, magnetic recharger. Click, powers right up. And it does have a replacement battery inside of it. You can unscrew it and put a battery in it. It's my daily carry, and keep it on the low setting at night. Because when you're waking up in the middle of the night, you got to answer nature's call going, the low setting is more enough to see where it goes. Because you're night vision, you can see fairly well. But if you turn that 1,000 lumen, you are blind as a bat outside of that beam. So when you turn it off, you can't see here. I make a point of closing one eye and turning it on low, guide myself over here to take care of nature's call and come back. So that should I have, when I turn the light, I open this eye, I got night vision still in one eye, and I can see to get my hammock and not be stone cold blind and trip and fall over. Little tricks you learn. Good night, Bear. Holler at me tomorrow. Randy, have I ever used a reflected oven much? Yes, baked bread ant many times. And if you go back and look in my, I think it's Simple Cooking or one of my cooking videos, I show how to make one out of aluminum foil. Of just sticks in the ground, wrapped in aluminum foil, put a couple of sticks stuck in the ground to be a pot stand. Then after I bake the sticks, I put aluminum foil up there and kind of press it down on aluminum foil. I take the back stick, wrap aluminum foil around it so it don't burn easy. And then I wrap the aluminum foil around it, come out between the two sticks. So I've made a V of aluminum foil. and then I put a piece of aluminum foil over the top of it where the back is taller than the front. So the back of the oven is up and it angles down the front to trap heat. And I just crinkle it in aluminum foil, take my pot, make it up, build a fire in front, reach in and sit it on my 3-stick pot stand and sit there and bake without having to carry a reflective oven. All I got to do is to carry heavy aluminum foil. And I've demonstrated that in a video. I've showed how to do that before. Oh yeah, Garen, boiling them in beer, yeah. Oh, Scott, yeah. I've had friends like that that's had a flashlight. They brought one. They had one light source and they're going to hike miles tonight. And it battery died, pulled out, bulb blowed, whatever. And here they are in the dark and they don't have anything. They're like they got a big lighter trying to see. It's no. It's time to just stop, set up camp, wait for sun up. Yeah, you mentioned boiling in beer. Eric, good night. Thanks for coming in. Try this one, guys. Go get you about 15 or 20 whole cloves of garlic, mince them out. Put them in a little container with a little bit of butter and bake them at about 375 for 45 minutes. When that's done and you bake it, baked garlic tastes like baked onion. It doesn't taste as much garlic as it tastes like an onion. And it tastes very sweet because the sugars come out. And it tastes a lot like a blooming onion that you get it out back. Okay. Now you take that and you mash it up, paste out of it. Now you get cheap beer. Don't waste good stuff. You take a boiler and you pour a couple of cans of cheap beer in it, and you go get bun-sized links of kielbasa, Polish sausage, kielbasa. And you cut it into bun-sized lengths and you put it in that beer. You bring it to a boil. You boil it for 5 minutes at a good rolling boil in that beer, and then you take it off and you let it steep another 10. While it's steeping, you take you a hoagie roll for the correct size or a big hot dog bun. You toast the one side, and then once it's ready, you bring it up and you take that garlic and butter and you smear it onto the bun, and you take that beer cooked brat and put into it and roll it up. That is something to eat. I made the mistake of making that for the wife, and for like 5 years, she wanted it once a week for me to cook bear dogs. Went, okay, I like your bear dogs. Dakota, I don't know by that name. Potatoes ganoche. It's a little $5 word for us simple rednecks, but I've had potatoes made many different ways in the field, both with wild ingredients and from store bought, etc. I was very lucky that I was part of a living history group called the Alabama Pre-1840 Historic Society, commonly called the Red Wolves of Alabama. And we did living history together for that 20 years, putting on the national rendezvous, the Southeastern National Rendezvous for like 10 years. If we weren't putting it on, we were working there as the dog soldier. So everyone from 1990 to 2000, we were in some capacity running it or being a dog soldier at it or whatever. And every member of our group, and which is about 30 people, were really good cooks in various degrees of ability. And we would on Tuesday night in our full historic regalia put on a big banquet, and everybody would pull out all the stops and cook. And so I've had roast turkey and dressing made completely on a fire with a spit and Dutch ovens. I've had sushi at events. I had Italian dishes I can't begin to pronounce, and everybody there was Don Davis. His spaghetti is to die for. Loved his spaghetti. You know, he made the best spaghetti, but Miss Jean and her garlic bread, which we call her Sunshine, perfect combination, you know. And then other members of the group would each throw in something. It was just this big banquet of just, you know, people you're at an event with anywhere from 5 to 10,000 people camping out. Okay, and they would come just to see our feast night and take pictures of what we were doing. It was I was so lucky to be part of a group that was such good cooks and got to have such a great time out there and learn to cook lots of things out there that I don't get a chance to do anymore because I ain't got 30 people to cook for. But Dakota, you're just going to have to go online and start looking to see if there's a group. I know at one time, somewhere around your part of the state, there was a Civil War group. I'm positive of that, but now if it's still there or not, my knowledge is a bit old. But you may want to look at that. Yes, Dakota. Okay, now I'm with you. Michigan Silverback. Any chance you could do a Springfield 03A3 or a 45 SCP 45 Colt vid? Absolutely, but I'm going to have to put it on a different platform. And that is the goal that I have stated for myself for the month of September. I've got a Rumble account. I'm Blackie Thomas on Rumble. And I've already been approached by Rumble saying, look, we'll make you a partner just like we on YouTube, just transfer gear. And I'm going to start publishing my cap and ball videos and stuff over there. I will do a video, tell you all about it when I get it going. But my goal is this month, September, to get that going and start publishing. I've already got a survival shotgun, like 12 videos shot of that I've had almost a year, and I haven't got around to doing it because I have so many irons in the fire. But I have access to O3A3, and that's one of my great loves is the O3A3, and I've got 1911s and stuff like that. And so I'm going to start doing videos and put them on there. I had done the cap and ball and shotgun stuff on YouTube, trying to kind of stay under the radar of doing that. But I have as much knowledge about ARs, O3s, 1911s, Browning high powers, and Smith & Wesson's, 03A3, 98 Mauser, M1 carbine. I've got as much knowledge in that as I have in bushcraft. And so I'm going to try to put that onto that platform and see if that works where it doesn't get me banned over here again. They cut your money to a trickle, because even though you're getting the same amount of views and the same amount of hours and the same amount of everything, and yet here you made this much and exactly the same, almost exactly the same amount of hour everything, and you're making this much. They just kind of flick a switch somewhere and you don't get nothing. So I'm going to try to move over there for that. So that is the goal for the month of September. Marcus, my EDC is a cold steel kukri light and the ring lock kukri. Cool. Good night. Good night, Sir Malcolm. Mitch, the Taurus Judge pistol is a very good 410, perfect for snakes, small stuff, self-defense. Absolutely 0 to 20 yards, absolutely great gun. The Circuit Judge, which is the blowed up version with the long barrel and the shot stock, save your money, get a pump Mossberg 410. The revolver works great as a handgun in a 410. Putting a 45 Colt in it, the rifling is just about non-existent. It's really a 410, but they're going to call it a 45 Colt, so it ain't a shotgun officially. And you're not going to have great accuracy with it. So don't think you're going to drop a 45 Colt in it and be able to target at 50 yards. It better be the size of a car, because it does not have that kind of accuracy with a 45 Colt. With the 410 and the slug, you got a better chance of hitting target at 35 yards or so. So yeah, the handgun great, especially around snakes and stuff like that. Fantastic. Randy T, yeah, those old 28 gauge, small little Spanish ones. I actually saw one at a local gun show here a little over a week ago, and they wanted $125 for that thing. And I was thinking about it, but I looked up into a deal I couldn't say no to, and that kind of took all my investment capital out right there. So we'll see. James Singer, good night. Thanks for dropping in. Kodak, I'll get it. I've already got the stuff, just got to edit, and I've already got the channel set up. I just got it posting on there. And the goal is to do it this month, and I will announce on YouTube what I'm doing and what I'm posting. I want to go ahead and get several of us so you can go over and see, and I'm going to be doing modern guns as well. There's going to be a discussion on 1911. You think I know stuff that's ball revolver? Where do you see what I know about a 1911? And we'll play around with that. So we'll get into it. Bushcraft with the Preacher. I think it's apples to oranges, but what do you think about Springfield M1A and 308 versus the Marlin 336 for deer hunting? I would go to 336. Now, this is from somebody who's built, had, used any competition M1As. The M1A is a nice, big, heavy rifle that's really a military gun and not well balanced. It can be a very accurate rifle. But for deer hunting, take the 336, put Levolution ammo in it. You can do anything that 308 will do at 300 yards. I've got a good friend of mine that used to be a Marine Scout sniper. He's got a scope mounted on his 336, 30-30. He puts the Levolution ammo into it, and he's staying on a deer target at 400 yards with that. In South Alabama, that's a ridiculously long shot where you're intentionally going diagonally across some huge field, because usually our shots down here are 50 yards when you see one. And he owns long range rifles as well. So yeah, those two for versatility goes to 336 because it's far easier to find low power and load for the 30-30 to load that. Life get tough. I can load that down with a round ball that should go into a cap and ball and just a couple of grains of powder and load it down where I can take rabbits and squirrels with that 30-30. Where I'm lever action it. That 308 does not. It ain't going to work worth a flip, and you run problems because of that gas problem. So if I was going to pick one to live with, I've owned and built M14s, and I don't own one anymore. It's a great military gun. It's a great long-range target gun when you're talking about 700-800 yards. But of a day-to-day gun, get the 336. That's just my little thoughts. Blackie, I have the 65 Western Bowie, the famous Marine Raider. What do you think about those buoys? They're good field knives. They're a light chopper. The Bowie knife is not great for using as a draw knife. It's not a good skinner, but for a fire prep, chop, light machete, works good. Nice, good bent handguard on it, protect your hand when you're chopping and stuff. Yeah. Grouch McGowan, Francis McGowan Grouch, he's got one of them he carried in Vietnam in combat. They used to sell them in the PX. The Marines used them so much, the Viet Cong argued in one of their negotiations that it was an inhumane weapon because the Marines were using it in close hand-to-hand fighting when they'd overrun a position, and they said it was a violation of the Geneva Convention, talking about that great Western Bowie. So, yeah, they're very good field knives. Andy, I hope they do. I'm hoping that with the coming of the new Adams revolver, the Beaumont Adams that's now coming out. That's the first new design I've seen other than like the Dance Brothers and so in a while. I'm hoping that kind of kicks the industry again into bringing out some of these off-center guns like that. And see, I hope Pieta and them will be the one to bring it. Usually Pieta's the first one to bring it out. They normally beat you birdie on that. So I hope they do. Randy, I hear you, brother. That was where I was when I'd want this, and the price was just out of my budget. And 2 years later, whenever I had a little bit more money, the price had gone up, and it was still just out of my budget. And whatever it was, it just always seemed to be like that close. You know, you have to wait for income tax money to come in to have enough money to go get one. And that was about the week the card break. Or then you'd get a girlfriend. Goodbye gun collection. Northeastern Woodsman. Hello there. I'm glad you enjoyed the Ground Pounder series. There's going to be more coming in that. Carlos, what's the name of your hat and where do you buy it? This is a Boy Scout Explorers Scoutmaster hat, and they're sold through the Boy Scouts. It's a crushable felt that you can have it sopping wet. It'll come back. That I got this when I was working with the Scouts, the Scoutmaster, and the shooting sports director back in the 1990s. I've had this very hat since about like 93. And I've got a brand new one just like it up there in storage. So whenever this one gives up the ghost, I got another one. But that's where these hats come from. I kill, yeah. Carry us, take the big knife, companion it with a small detail knife, you're good to go. Donald Mike, get in. Hello. Worm Wrangler. Well, you missed quite a bit tonight. We've been talking up a storm tonight. You have to run back up the comments. There's a lot of good stuff going on. Charles Martin, have you ever thought about using a silver wagon, canvas wagon to pull your stuff to the silver wolves? Actually, I had a friend of mine back in living history that he went up and made kind of like a chuck wagon as a camping wagon. He did the research and found out what the early 1800 Conestoga wagon looked like. And he would come to events. He'd pull it on a trailer till he got to the event. And then he would take off and they would pull it and it had all his camping gear in it. And he actually camped in it and he had it set up like a little RV, just like they'd had back in the early 1800s. But yeah, it can be done. It's just transporting it. Northwestern, what's your opinion on tiger stripe? Works very well. It works down here in my woods very well around pine trees and stuff. When they came up with a real tree camouflage, and he talked about the famous thing where he scooped up a handful of leaves and stuff, and he said this is what it should look like. When they did the original publicity photo of that, he was wearing tiger stripe. That first pattern he did looked like military tiger stripe, but it had all that stuff in it, and they refined it and made it into what we know as real tree today. But back when I was hunting real heavily back in the 80s and stuff, early 80s, I had a full set of Vietnam tiger stripe, including a field jacket in it. And that was my camouflage hunting gear for a long time. Works very well. Dakota, what are your thoughts on the Sears and Roebuck 12 gauge? Sears and Roebuck did not manufacture anything. They rebranded somebody else. So usually their shotguns and stuff that were the Ted Williams and stuff were Marlins or Winchesters. They make a little subtle cosmetic change so you could spot the difference and say it was a different model, but it's actually a Marlin or a Winchester, and they're normally very good workable guns. Sir Malcolm, Blackie, do you have a video on how to make a cooking fire with absolutely minimum smoke, first time, every time? I'd love to see you take that on. Be glad to do it. The secret is wood. Uh, Dry oak bark off of a dead on the ground oak tree, if it's dry, makes a very hot, very low smoke fire. Put you a few shavings of something else, get going, and then start taking slabs side of the end of that bark and put in there, and it starts glowing like the end of a cigar. It almost instantly goes to coals, and it makes all this heat with little or no smoke. It's got to be dry. And so the whole secret to how to make a fire with little or no smoke is the wood. Given the right wood, I can make where you can't see smoke 10 yards away. Finding that wood, that's the hard part. A lot of times you're stuck with what you got available. But that's the thing, is dry oak bark, that thick, like water oak and stuff like that, as long as it's dry. And it's been dead quite a while. We got a tree that's been down for years, but you can go up and you take your hand, bark lifts off like a blanket lifting up. Yeah, that's what you want for that kind of smoke-less fire. Oh, Chuck Martin, yeah, those would be very handy. Yes. In fact, like I said, Walmart sells those with the big beach tire. There's a narrow tire, and then like $10 more. There's a big beach tire. Big beach tire would be better for off-road moving around the campsite. Lonnie, yes, you can make a tighter headband for one within reason. And what I recommend you do is uh, get the hat wet, take a cord, wrap it around 2 or 3 times, pulling it tight each time, and then tie it, and then keep it on your head a few minutes. Now I'm gonna tell you, it's gonna give you a headache, but you shrink it down where it's tight against your head, and then once you get it out of there, you're gonna ease it gently off your head, and have something made up ahead of time, roughly your head size. Okay, and set it down on it. You may have to do that 1 or 2 times until you get it to shrink down to where it fits your head the proper size. Wetting the hat or steaming the hat to do it. Better yet, if you can find somebody that actually does hats, someplace for like cowboys and stuff like that, that's a hat steamer, they can do it a lot easier than that. I have seen it done that way. Melvis, I'm going to invite you to an event, and it goes as long as everyone stays, and you get whatever you can make out of it, which is probably nothing. Okay. I'm a big fan of making nothing. I've made nothing a lot of my life. Eric Bader, thank you. Dan Lutz is a cherished memory and a friend of mine. And it was just so tragic to lose him that way. His amount of knowledge was just awesome. It really was. He's the only man that could talk me into the ground. I mean, we started at 7 that morning when I went up and spent the week with him. We started at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we did not shut up till 4 in the morning until finally my eyes were rolling back in my head. And I said, dude, I got to take a nap. And he was just getting wound up. Well, let's talk about Star Trek. You're a fan of Star Trek too. You know, man was the only man I've ever met that could talk me in the ground. But he was a wealth of knowledge, and I miss him dearly. Edgar, I agree. The big thing about it is earth tones, not moving a lot. Camouflage is really necessary with certain things like turkey. You can see you blink at 100 yards. But deer and other big grazing animals usually are not, as long as you're not moving and you're wearing something natural and you break up your silhouette so you don't automatically look like a human, you get away with a lot. Kill, yes, it can. You probably gonna have to steam it though. Use a hot steam on it. But I would do some research before I worked on a real good expensive hat. Don't just take my word for it. Start looking up cowboy hats and stuff like that and see what they're doing and see if there's a better tutorial than what I gave you. What I'm talking about, we used to get the big old wool blanks at Rendezvous, and it's a one size fit all, and 9 times out of 10 it didn't fit your head. And so it's how we would come up with a hat band, shrink it down tight enough, and get it to fit our heads better. So, Randy, ever have a gun so pretty you're reluctant to take it out through the bush? Yes. Oh, I know about that. Yeah. Um, yeah. You spend a lot of time, money, and it looks just so pretty, and you want to take it out there, but dang, you don't want to scratch it up. Oh, when I built my flintlock, my 50 caliber left hand flintlock, I bought a Dixie kit and then I modified it, and I intentionally um, antiqued it. I dinged it up. I beat on it. I did whatever to put knocks and cracks and all kinds of marks on it. I wanted it to look there because the persona that I was portraying was a lower working class, woods runner that couldn't afford real nice. I wanted a good, accurate rifle, but I wanted it to look like it was kind of beat up. And so I had to ding and bang that thing up. And first time I came up to an event with it, and somebody looked up and they thought it was a barn find. The way I antique one, they were looking at it and they thought I had found an original and pulled it out of a barn somewhere. And somebody was biting my head off about bringing an original out here to shoot. It needs to be on display in a museum. And I had to laugh at him and said, it's a brand new gun. I just put it together in like 3 months. He would not believe it until I showed him the manufacturer on it. Brett, good evening. Crypto, I'm sure that we'll bring that back. The supply of ABL, I believe, is coming out of Germany. And Germany is having some problems, um, like a lot of the places in Europe and stuff right now. And so I heard him talk not long ago, and I saw him in January. He was talking about us getting the supplies of ABL was just getting a hit and miss because you could put in your order and it may come, and then they may back order you for months because it's just getting it out of Germany. And that thickness, see, that's not usual. They think of razor blades. You need the thinner stuff all day, but you need that big old thick stuff. And so therefore, I'm sure if it ever becomes available, you'll see more of them pop up because he is the master of the EBL. Carlos, Blackie, any thoughts on survival preparedness concerning the Ukrainian war? As always, you should have some stuff prepared. You should have a couple of months worth of food supply plugged back. You should have some cash. You should have the ability to defend yourself in case of civil unrest. You should have enough fuel to get you out of there if you got to get out of there. And you should be just prepared to have packs and stuff like that. That's just common sense. If the powers that be are dumb enough to cause such calamity as an actual world war, it will be a war unlike any war mankind has ever fought before. And so you're just going to have to be as prepared as you can. There is no perfect playbook that's going to fall right in. Like a wise man said, all plans, go to hell as soon as combat is joined. So you just got to prepare as best you can and get as much knowledge as you can, and prepare yourself as best you can, as best as I can tell you. Uh, Branch preparedness, yes. Me and the other instructors have set up a thing. We're finalizing classes right now. What was kind of holding us up was one of our members had a family commitment that had to be going on for like 2 weeks. And so he's back now, and we're going to be ironing it out very quickly. And I'll be posting a class schedule probably next week. As we'll have it ironed out, and I'll be posting a video with the class schedule, and that will also be posted. Dakota will be posting either a link to it or reiterating it. James Bender will, and Mike Simmons will. So all of us will be posting the same information and what we're going to be covering at it. We got it almost ironed out. We're just back and forth the final details. We needed this last instructor in the conversation to make sure that we're all working on the same page. So it is coming. Just hang in there. Alaska is the last place to be in World War III. Back during the Soviet era, they fully expected that in the dead of winter that the Soviets would come across the ice into Alaska and northern Canada. And the Soviets were training for that. We know that. That they actually had figured out a way to do it. They would mass troops and bring them across and then jump them into the snow up there on the Arctic Circle above in Canada and northern Alaska rapidly. And the dead of winter, because they're better suited for winter than we are, because look where they're at. Soviet troops out of Siberia. And then once they had air superiority, they were going to have icebreakers cut paths and barges, bring tanks and stuff across. We know that from some of the doctrine that we found out in the 90s after the war was over. And so Alaska was going to be a hotbed back in them days. Today, everything talks about how they're going to throw this, do that in the lower 48, and you might be in a better place up there than we are down here, you know. Gray Wolf, you're correct. They jumped without parachutes because they didn't have them. And so they just skimmed in, 50 feet up over deep snow, and the guys ran out the window and landed in the helicast into the snow 100 miles an hour. They expected 50% casualties. They spent double the amount of men needed. So you'd have the force you needed. Half of them are wiped out and half of them are functional. And believe it or not, it worked, There was it was one of the Central American countries that they wanted to develop a rapid reaction force, and they didn't want to do parachutes. And so what they did was helicast. They just put their guys into big cargo aircraft that had a deck that would lower down on the back, and they'd come over a lake at like 10 feet off the deck, flying at about 80 miles an hour, and they just run off the ramp off the back and helicast that way. And they actually did very good at it. It was like, jumping without a parachute, jump out of a plane, land in a lake full of alligators and crocs and everything else, swim to the bank, and then form up a unit and go after the bad guys. Them boys was tough. Didn't say they were smart. They tough. Well, Ron, that's the thing. Technology is the Achilles heel of the world. We depend on it so much, and it'd be so easy just to click, click. That's the reason a smaller country could do an EMP and cause a great deal of havoc and everything. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to win the war, but they could do a great deal of havoc. And so, like I said, if we do end up in another war, and if human nature and history is anything to go by, we just gotta. I mean, we had World War in the early 1800s. Those were the Napoleonic Wars. It was basically a world war. Then we had World War I. That was going to be the end of all wars. Then we didn't have a bed full, and 20 years later we had another war that was going to end all wars. We're never going to have another one. Then we had tons of proxy wars all over the planet that we're still putting on in places. And I remember a history teacher I had in 5th grade that pointed out, he said, since the inception of what we've done in the United States in 1750, we have been in combat every 10 years since 1750 with somebody, whether it was Barbary Coast pirates, Indians, Seminoles, whatever. Every 10 years, we're in combat with somebody since our inception. And it's been pretty much true. Edgar, I don't think Florida is the place to be either. Um, Too much valuable real estate from somebody else's point of view of landing ships, materials. You can just drive right up on a beach there, landing craft and stuff. And so that will probably become, somebody's big objective to land down there. If you control the Gulf, you control all the shipping, and it'd be very easy to do. So from a tactical point of view, anywhere within 300 miles of the coast is going to be a hot spot. Whereas, like, for example, here in Alabama, if you look on a map of counties, Alabama, and you're going to find up in high part of the state, there's Walker County, Alabama. Look how big that county is. The entire county, every inch of it, has been undermined by a coal mine. So there's like 50 or 60 entrances to go down. You can go down there and look across 30 miles of 40 feet high empty space. 800 or 900 feet down in the ground. I've been down in those coal mines. And then that entire county has been undermined. So you could put a whole lot of people down there, couldn't you? So there's a lot of places. But that's another topic for another time. We got about 2 minutes before we say goodnight. Guys, I want to thank you so much for all the comments. I really do appreciate all y'all comments and you coming in and joining me. I really do. And I promise you that I'll be posting more videos real soon. Well, guys, until next time, y'all be safe. Have a good night. And I will see y'all next week. Till then, safe journeys, everybody. Be safe.